I used to be in the Navy, stationed on an Aegis-class guided missile cruiser. One day at sea, I'm taking a break on the flight deck, which was just behind the rear Aegis radar array, and I noticed all these dead birds all over the flight deck. It didn't take me too long to realize that these birds had flown in front of the radar and been microwaved to death. This gave me an idea. I figured if it works on birds, it should work on popcorn. A microwave's a microwave, right? So, the next time we pull into port, I go to get some microwave popcorn. Unfortunately, my shopping trip coincided with Super Bowl Sunday, so the microwave popcorn, and just about every other salty snack in the store, was gone. All they had left was Jiffy Pop. I didn't even know they still made Jiffy Pop. Anyway, science waits for no man, or something like that, so I returned to the ship and stashed the popcorn in my shop. During our next outing, I tie some string to the handle of the Jiffy Pop pan, and sneak out onto the weather deck. Just forward of my shop was a ladder that led to the deck overlooking the radar array, but which is closed off during radar operations for safety reasons, so I climb up there and lower the Jiffy Pop down in front of the array. Refi pop boom. The Jiffy Pop explodes immediately, showering the flight deck with burned popcorn. I pull the burst pan up, wind up my string, and chuck the entire apparatus over the side before running back into my shop. No sooner do I walk in the door, than the phone rings. It's 6, the war room. The officer in charge wants me to go out on the weather deck and look behind us, and tell him if anything's there. I do, there isn't, and I tell him so. He hangs up, swearing.
INB4 Futurama. Later that night, I get the story from a radioman friend of mine who was in CICS at the time. Turns out that the Jiffy Pop pan had reflected the radar waves. For those who aren't familiar with radar operation, a radar array sweeps back and forth, radiating waves the whole time. The waves are then reflected back to the array by anything they hit, such as planes, another ship, etc. This reflection tells the radar how big something is, how far away it is, etc. The problem comes with the wavelengths involved. At too close a distance, an object can show up on the radar as being at a different distance than it really is, or a different size.
My Jiffy Pop pan appeared on the radar as a 3-mile wide contact, 100 yards off the stern, and was only on screen for a couple of seconds before disappearing. The OAK was freaking out about it, and had called the Air Force, so, in the end, my curiosity about the microwave properties of an Aegis radar caused a U.S. Navy warship to file a false UFO report. I didn't tell anyone I was involved until long after I got out. I wonder how many military UFO encounters have been caused by things like this? Epic thread.
That's a cool story, dude. Awesome. The weather radar in the nose of C-130s is not quite as spectacular, but it is still useful. When on the ground with the AC powered up, you can walk out to the nose, open the radome, and sit a cup of cold coffee inside the radome. Then shut the radome, go up the cockpit, and flip the radar on for a few seconds. Voila, hot coffee. That's hilarious.
Okay, it's a long story. This place, it's my aunt's house. She has lived in this desert her whole life, in the middle of nowhere. She has a restaurant in there, but the story, it's about his son. His son, it's one of 33 miners that were trapped in a mine in the Chilean desert. When that happened, I barely knew him. But I was close, so I went with my aunt to wait until they got them out. They were trapped inside the mine for 69 days. When he got out, they made them stars, so I didn't see him in long while. But one summer we meet again in that house in the desert. We drank some beers and he told me that they weren't alone down there. There was someone else in there, living underground. We call them by many names, but we are never sure about them. Normally you only see a shadow or something going very fast, but he seemed quite sure. All miners say the same, that they weren't alone down there, but they brush it off with the typical response. We knew our families were waiting for us, but he told me that something lives down there, and they don't want to be disturbed.
Inside the mine, they could hear them at first. They obviously thought that they were going crazy, but they felt that something was watching them from the dark. The days passed underground and despair got to them. Some wandered in the dark. There it's when they started to notice them talking about it keep them sane. Somehow they managed to remain calm and rational. Miners are used to the dark and the confinement, but nothing could prepare you for this. I'll never be sure if this happened. I wasn't down there, but he talked about them like they were very real and they are still there. He told me that they were afraid at first. With time they got used to the presence of those little people of the underground. Haven't seen my uncle since. Then I find out about the Atacama humanoid and it made perfect sense to me.
My grandpa always taught me to fear rainy days. He would tell me these stories about Reedvark, the local maximum security prison. He would tell me about the violent criminals, and the deeds they did to end up there. He would explain to me how some of these men were so dangerous that they couldn't be trusted to live in normal jail cells, that they needed to be chained to the stone walls. My grandpa would tell me about rainy days and stormy nights, how the rain would weaken the stone, and how these men could pull the chains right out of the wall, if the weather was bad enough. He showed me newspaper clippings of escapees. There was always a handful per year. He would tell me that, to a T, the prison breaks always coincided with rainy weather. Most escapees would flee to the surrounding neighborhoods. They would try to hide in people's garages and basements, under their porches, waiting for the rain to pass. Sometimes the men would break into the houses. Sometimes the men would do unspeakable things to people residing in those houses. We lived only about 8 miles from Reedvark. And on rainy days, my grandpa would remind me of this. My grandpa would tell me that on rainy days it was best to just stay in my room, to lock my door, to put some music on low, grab a comic book, and get my head somewhere else. He even taught me how to turn my closet into a fortress of solitude. We threw a blanket and couple of pillows in there. I had a few posters of superheroes on the closet wall. I kept a box of comic books and baseball cards in one corner, and a metallic footlocker filled with junk food and cassette tapes in the other. My grandpa would encourage me to get in the closet when it rained, especially when it stormed. I would sit in there, listening to my Walkman. I would finger through comic books. I would bundle myself up against the pillows and drift to sleep. I felt safe in my closet. And I enjoyed the hours that I would spend in there on rainy days.
He would tell me that most of the time during escapes, the convicts would usually only hurt people they happened to come across. If they broke into a home to avoid police, and there was a family sitting around the TV in the living room, they would strike. He would tell me that if a Reedvark prisoner escaped, and if they came to our neighborhood, and if they broke into our house, that as long as I stayed in my closet, I'd be okay. It would be possible for a convict to find me and hurt me. But as long as I stayed in my closet fort, I would be as safe as anyone in town. I would remind myself of this on rainy days. I would sit in my closet and think about it, and it would make me feel safe. My grandpa disappeared one June. I lived with him alone. My parents had died years earlier. My grandpa disappeared and I was afraid to call the police. I knew if something happened to my grandpa, the police would take me away and force me to live in a home. I didn't want to live in a home. I had a home. I kept his disappearance to myself for over a week. I would walk myself to school. I knew where Grandpa kept emergency cash, and so I would take a little here and there to the corner bodega and buy some milk and sandwich meats. One day, about 8 days after his disappearance, they let us out of school early. Storm of the century, they said. Thunder and lightning, and heavy rain all night. The rain was so heavy that night, the local streets flooded over on the walk home from school. The water was up to my ankles. By 9 o'clock the water was coming up to people's knees. I got home, climbed into my little hiding space and covered myself in a blanket. Thunder clapped outside. I was very afraid. The storm itself unsettled me, but thinking about Reedvark and how easy it would be to escape during a storm like this terrified me.
We lost power after a little while. I sat in the closet in darkness. I turned to my Walkman for solace. After a few hours, the music started to stutter. After a few more minutes it stopped altogether. Batteries. Dead as doornails. I continued to sit in silence. The power hadn't come back on yet. The darkness and silence enveloped me. Then the silence was broken by a scratching noise some distance away. I ignored it at first, but it grew louder and more insistent. Finally, I reluctantly left the safety of my fort. In the upstairs hallway I stopped and listened. The noise was clearly coming from downstairs. I descended the stairs, my heart pounding in my chest. I got to the kitchen and stopped to listen again. The noise still sounded as if it were coming from below me. We had no basement, so the fact that the noises were coming from beneath me was unsettling. There were more noises now, too, not just the scraping. I thought I heard moaning. I crouched low to the floor, listening. The noises got louder as I entered the living room, louder still as I entered the main corridor. I stopped on a throw rug at the end of the hallway. The noises were at their loudest here, below me. I pulled the throw rug away and saw a trap door. It must have led to a basement or crawl space. I had no idea it existed. I had no idea there was anything under that rug. I wondered why it was padlocked. Grabbed a ring of old keys that hung on a hook in the mudroom. I tried the keys in the padlock one after another. The fourth key slid into the lock like a base runner sliding into. Something pounded against the bottom of the trapdoor. Thwayap. Thwayap. It was followed by muffled voices. Hello. Ebby Dare. I could barely make out the voices. Thwayap. Help us. I understood that. I turned the key and lifted up trapdoor.
The worst smell I've ever known wafted up and hit me in the chest. I instantly heard women crying and a man's voice sobbing, "Thank God, oh thank God." And then another. "Water. Please, we need water." The next few days were a whirlwind. Police, media, and gawkers descended on the house. Our small town in Arizona never saw much excitement. The news of a homegrown serial killer sent an electric jolt through the populace. The media was relentless. The police had a million questions. "Where's your grandfather?" "I don't know." "Did you know what he was doing?" "Did you help him hide his secret?" "No," I'd said. "No, never." "Did you help your grandfather bury the bodies in the backyard?" "No." "You must have helped." They'd said. "No. You must have helped. An old man like that wouldn't be able to dig in the Arizona clay all by himself." And then it hit me. "Rain," I'd said. The policeman looked at me blankly. "What?" He'd wait for it to rain.
About 12 years ago, a man died in high orbit over Tau Ceti V. His name was Drake McDougal, and aside from a few snapshots and vague anecdotes from his drinking buddies, that's probably all we'll ever know about him. Another colony-born man with little records and little documentation, working whatever asteroid field the Dracs deigned to allow them. Every now and then a Drac gunship would strut on through the system, Pax Draconia and all that. But that was it. One fine day, one of those gunships had a misjump. A bad one. It arrived only 90 clicks above Atmo, with all of its impellers blown out by the gravatic feedback of Tau Ceti V's gravity well. The Dracs scraped enough power together for a good system-wide broadbeam and were already beginning the death chant when they hit Atmo. People laughed at the recording of 60 Dracs going from mysterious chanting to what if that fucking for years after they forgot the name Drake McDougal. The deafening clang and split second of silence afterwards never failed to entertain. Drake had performed a hasty re-entry seconds after the gunship and partially slagged his heat shield diving after it. Experts later calculated he suffered 11 Gs when he leaned on the retro to match velocities with the Dracs long enough to engage the mag grapples on his little mining tug. Even the massively overpowered drive of a tug has its limits, and Drake's little ship hit hers about 1.5 minutes later. Pushed too far, the tug's fusion plant lost containment just as he finished slingshotting the gunship into low orbit. It was unharmed, of course, the Drac opinion of fusion power best translated as quaint, kind of how we view butter churns. It was on the local news within hours, on newsnets across human space within days. It was discussed, memorialized, marveled upon, chewed over by daytime talk show hosts, and I think somebody even bought a plaque or some shit like that. Then there was a freighter accident, and a mass shooting on Orbital 5, and of course, the first Vandal attacks in the periphery. The galaxy moved on. 12 years is a long time, especially during war, so 12 years later, as the Vandals' main fleet was jumping in near Jupiter and we were strapping into the crash couches of what we enthusiastically called warships, I guarantee you not one man in the entire defense force could remember who Drake McDougal was. Well, the Dracs sure as hell did. Dracs do not fuck around. Dozens of 2-kilometer-long Drac supercaps jumped in barely 90k clicks away, and then we just stood around staring at our displays like the slack-jawed apes we were as we watched what a real can of galactic whoop-s looked like. You could actually see the atmosphere of Jupiter roil occasionally when a Vandal ship happened to cross between it and the Drac fleet. There's still lightning storms on Jupiter now, something about residual heavy ions and massive static charges or something. 58 hours later, with every Vandal ship reduced to slag debris and 9 wounded Drac ships spinning about as they vented atmosphere, they started with the broadband chanting again. And then the communique that confused the hell out of us all. "Do you hold our debt fulfilled?" After the 6th or 7th comms officer told them we don't know what the hell you're talking about as politely as possible, the Drac fleet commander got on the horn and asked to speak to a human admiral in roughly the same tone as a telemarketer telling a kid to give the phone to daddy. When the admiral didn't know either, the Drac went silent for a minute, and when he came back on his translator was using much smaller words, and talking slower. Is our blood debt to Drake McDougal's clan now satisfied? The Admiral said who? What the Drac commander said next would have caused a major diplomatic incident had he remembered to revert to the more complex translation protocols. He thought the Admiral must be an idiot, a coward, or both. Eventually the diplomats were called out, and we were asked why the human race had largely forgotten the sacrifice of Drake McDougal. Humans, we explained, sacrifice themselves all the time. We trotted out every news clip from the space-wide nets from the last 12 years. Some freighter cook that fell on a grenade during a pirate raid on Outreach, a ship engineer who locked himself into the reactor room and kept containment until the crew evacuated. Firefighter who died shielding a child from falling debris with his body during an earthquake. Stuff like that. The Dracs were utterly stunned. Their diplomats wandered out of the conference room in a daze. We just told them that the rarest, most selfless and honorable of acts that incurred generations-long blood debts and moved entire fleets, was so routine for our species that they were bumped off the news by latest celebrity scandal. Everything changed for humanity after that. And it was all thanks to a single tug pilot who taught the galaxy what truly defines man.
There will be no collapse the way some of these people think of it. It's not going to be like the movie Dawn of the Dead or whatever, where one day suddenly shit hits the fan and prices skyrocket and everyone begins to riot and the SS comes marching down the street to kill everyone. There will be no happening. It's far more insidious than that. Read the poem The Hollow Men by T.S. Eliot and you'll understand. You'll just notice that everyday simple things will become a little more expensive. Everyone's homes and apartments will start to get smaller. Your work hours will get longer, but your pay will decrease. You'll see family and friends less, and find that in time you care less about them. Every day you'll find yourself lowering your standards for everything: work, food, relationships, etc. Job security will no longer exist as a concept. You'll notice houses and apartments shrinking. People will start hanging on to clothing longer and longer. Less people will get married, even less will have children. People will engross themselves in technological distractions and fantasy while never truly experiencing the real world. Whatever dream people used to have about what their lives were going to be will become for them a distant memory. The only thing left for them will be the reality of their debt and their poverty. And every minute of every day they will be told, "You are stupid, ugly, and weak, but together we are free, prosperous, and safe." That is the collapse. The reduction of the American man into a feudal serf, incapable of feeling love or hate, incapable of seeing the pitiful nature of his situation for what it is or recognizing his own self-worth.
Be me, 11, maybe 12 years old, have a sleepover with a couple of buddies cuz kids are fags. Set up telescope in backyard. 6 stars anon. Spot something that looked like a shooting star. Shooting stars don't zigzag. Zigzag anon. Bruh sick. Head eye side for vidya. Old school WWF on N64. Buddies fall asleep. I stay up and create cool wrestlers. Gotta pee. Get up and head through dark hallway and stop by doorframe to mudroom. Feel eyes. You know the feeling. TF is that. Look up in 2 corner of frame. A mao. FKN nope my baby brain out. White face. No nose or mouth. Large oval eyes. Black. Empty. Stare into your soul shit. Tilts its head at me. Go to scream and wake up next to buddies. N64 and TV opposite side of the room. WTF man, there's more, and I am just bored and high enough to continue.
7th grade, rash on head, top of skull, itchy, eventually rash becomes a sore, go to doctor, they say it's a tumor attached to my skull, make appointments, they remove it with an electric needle. Pretty much carve it out of my head, fairly painless, tingly, they take it away, won't let me see it, avoid questions, at front desk, glance outside and see the doctor that carved it out, sitting on curb, smoking a cig, sobbing, what fuck doctor. Anon, never see what they took out, never hear about it again.
I live near a pretty big shopping mall. Right outside it is a massive park and many acres of forest which are dotted with lakes and such that are all connected. There was this one pond which was close to the play parks. This pond was fucking massive and they used to let you hire paddle boats until they kept getting sunk. 2 stories for you. 1, be about 7 or 8 years old. Grandparents are playing with me at the play park while my parents do the shopping. I make friends with this boy. Can't remember his name, so let's call him L. Me and L are on this badass spider web that's around 50 feet high. We're both pansies so we don't ever go above 10 feet. L had a brother who was about 6 but he climbed to the motherfucking top, shouts to L and tells him there's a monster in the lake. L tells him monsters don't exist despite his brother insisting that there he saw one in the lake. L's brother says it's watching a little boy. Me and L are like whatever and we go on the swings. When my parents finish shopping and are walking me home they see police by the lakeside. Little boy fell in the lake and never resurfaced. Divers and shit searched for him too. Never found anything. 2. On same lake about 2 years later, on one of the hired paddle boats, paddling along with my mother and my uncle when we suddenly can't move anymore. Paddle boat makes god-awful scraping sound and refused to move. Uncle thought we got caught on some weeds so he sticks his hand in and moves it around. He turns as wide as a sheep and tells us to get away from the sides of the boat. Greater than we oblige. 10 or 15 minutes later there's a couple big waves right under us, something shoots through the water and nearly capsizes little boat. Uncle rows us back like a fucking Viking. The tour boat guys asked us if we were okay. We said yes, just got a little stuck on something. They refunded us our money and told us not to tell anyone.
Granddad told me about his great uncle before he passed a few years ago. Not really paranormal, but the idea kind of stuck with me. Reminds me of some of the things that pop into my head, but I'd already be committed if I were crazy, I guess. Great uncle was a pharmacist. Granddad remembered meeting him a few times really young. Parents started sending them to their rooms when he stopped by, only once or twice. But he heard them arguing. He died before Granddad turned 10. Went to the funeral. Nothing real interesting happened, but closed casket years later asks his granddad about brother great uncle. Doesn't want to talk about it. Keeps pestering and gets smacked around. More years later his granddad is on his last legs. Asks him again. Says stop pestering the dead and let him go in peace. His granddad dies. My granddad asks his dad what happened. Shortly after the wake, so he's in the mood to reminisce. Says his great uncle helped support granddad when he started family, was pretty normal guy but got weirder and more distant over the years. Went to visit him once and his house was much empty, but there was a makeshift shed that was boarded up behind. Asked great uncle about it. He dodged the question and got angry. They started fighting and they didn't see him for a while. Story kinda went around aimlessly like this, so I'll cut short. When he died the senpai asked around what was going on. Basically he thought people turned into demons after sundown and were trying to break into his house. House was too big so he made the shed to sleep and right in. Boarded it up every night to protect himself. One day he wrote a note to his brother saying goodbye. That the demons were seeping in through the cracks like sludge. Was barely comprehensible. Smashed door open and ran out. Went missing. Few days later his body was found in the woods. Eaten by wild dog. But abandoned. Hence closed casket could just have been granddad fucking me, but dunno. Miss you fucker.
Not an innawoods but an AC. Be researching Humboldt squid. Be looking from safe distance. Dumbass diving partner decides to get a better look. Nemajetbackhere.jpg. He swims right in the middle of a school of them. Oh shit nigger watrudoan.gif. A smaller one swims up to him. Don't do it nigga. He grabs it. It turns red. It bites his arm and eats his fucking bicep with a few bites. He flails around trying to get the fucker off. Other one gets his leg and I shit you not. His foot comes off. You done goofed. Large one about 8 feet long, maybe 200 to 300 pounds, wraps its tentacle around his torso. Fucking thing is digging in him. See the guy violently thrash around even more. I can barely see through the blood. The big one must have had his fill of human flesh because he started swimming away. Saw him holding a bone in his tentacle. It was a rib. He was eating some flesh off of it. I looked back over to the frenzy that has erupted. Just a ton of squid from 3 to 7 feet long swimming in and out of a cloud of blood. I remember seeing a few innards floating around.
This happened to me last night at my father's house. Be me, hanging out with dad because why not? He's cool and always watches sci-fi movies with me. Have uneasy feelings since I've arrived. Realize I've felt this way the past couple of times I was there. Watching Prometheus when we hear a loud bang outside before this next part. I should explain that my father lives in a very small house. The front doors goes straight into the living room connected to a kitchen with no walls separating it. One door goes into a bedroom from the kitchen. Another door goes into a middle room with one wall that has a single window, and 2 doors at the back of the room. One to the bathroom, and one to the laundry room. The laundry room has a door that opens into the backyard. Dad freaks out, turns TV and Blu-ray player off immediately, tells me to get into middle room and huddle between a dresser and a wall. He turns off every light in the house and hands me a thick piece of wood. I suggest we see what's going on outside and he tells me no, stay out of the light, son. WTF.jpg, uneasy feeling from when I arrived intensifies tenfold, asks dad what he means, he doesn't answer, sitting in silence in the middle room for about 5 minutes, Start hearing voices coming from the window in the bathroom. Do you hear that, son? Nod my head and focus on the direction of the bathroom. Pitch black so I can't see anything past the stick in my hands. Talking disappears. Start looking for my dad's machete. Every time I get close to a window my dad tells me to get away from it. Every time I step into a patch of light my dad tells me to get out of the light. We both get back into position between the wall and dresser. Begin hearing taps and scrapes against the back door. Ask dad what that is. He shushes me. Sit like this for what seems like hours.
After a period of time I couldn't keep up with my dad begins telling me about weird things happening to him. He says he's been seeing things in the woods behind his house, and when he takes pictures he sees faces. Says the voices outside is a regular occurrence and he is used to it. Says his spoons disappeared for about a week, then reappeared in the exact same spot he had seen them last. Tells me about times where it sounds like something is on his rule and when he goes to check nothing is there. Talks about experiences where when him and his girlfriend leave, they come back with their dresser drawers open and their clothes all over the ground, soaking wet. The last thing he tells me is this. Word for word. There are entities here, son. I've seen them. I no-ped the fuck out, told him I wanted to leave, packed my things and got the fuck out of there. I still think there are things he hasn't told me about because while I was leaving, he kept saying, please hurry up. Son. Please hurry. I no-ped out so fast I forgot to grab both of my movies and my favorite hat. Sorry for the anticlimactic ending, but that's what happened. It was terrifying, to say the least.
B8. Live across the street from best friend. We talk to each other on walkie-talkies every night around 10 while looking at each other with binoculars. One night talking to him a little than usual like 11 I think. His parents are out late so we could chat. We are just bullshitting. I'll drop my binoculars and have to find him again. While I'm looking I see someone activate their porch light on the side of their house and look around really weirdly. Oh fuck. I tell him I think someone is breaking into his house. Hear glass smash on his side of the walkie. Tell him to hide under his bed and keep his walkie on. Hear loud footsteps and stuff being thrown around. After like 10 minutes that felt like eternity the door slams and I see the guy run away from the house. Call the police cause I don't want him to make any noise. Police show up just as his parents show up. Asked my parents about it the next day cause they were friends of his parents. Some prowler had been following kids around the neighborhood and was probably gonna abduct my friend. I'm a hero.
Be me, be small, hanging out with friend from school. Her dad is a cool rad single parent so he lets her do pretty much whatever. Trying to beat the desert optional boss in Kingdom Hearts. The one with the bubble shield and the scimitars. That one. Yes, phone rings. Anon go take it I can't pause. Yes you can you fucker, take the phone. Hey friend's mom. Tell her he'll be dropping by today. Still in, name of neighborhood, right? Ah yeah? Sweet. Don't stay up late haha. They must be divorced and she just wanted to pop by to say hi and stuff. Friend ask who is phone. Your mom, ha 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 fuck off. Not funny who is it? Literally your mother, she's coming by later today. Her mother was a mentally ill violent alcoholic, presumed dead years ago when they found her clothes, wallet and a suicide note, plastified, inside a duffel bag in a fishing net in the middle of the sea. Call her father, call the cops, call her ID from a gas station on the other side of the country. Police deliver a sketch of the woman who used the phone based on bartender and security cams. It's the fucking mother, no car. She walked through the actual fields surrounding the station and left the same way. No one knows where she is. It's been over a decade and nothing happened, but my friend still has nightmares with this.
B17. Home alone as parents are out of town. Have dream where I'm sitting in a greenhouse, about to leave greenhouse when suddenly this girl pulls my arm and stops me from leaving. She looks terrified. Wait. She says, she looks like she's listening for something. After a few moments, she says, okay, go, wake up and check the front door. Wake up. I shoot awake and without even thinking, run to the front door. It's slightly ajar. Close it and lock it. Maybe 5 seconds later the doorknob jiggles. MFW hid in my room as I called the police. I didn't know if I was locking someone out or locking someone in. They searched my house and around my neighborhood and nothing.
Nope. Tired of all the bullshit occult threads dominating /x/. Here's something that still bothers me. Have work in the morning so I set an alarm for 6 a.m., place my phone on the nightstand, shut off the light and wrap myself up in a cocoon of blankets, doze off and my phone starts going off. I knew there was no way it was already time to get up for work so I reach my hand toward my phone on the nightstand too. As I'm reaching over, I feel my fingers run through something that feels like hair. My heart was beating so hard I thought it was going to come out of my chest. I jumped out of bed so quick and bolted toward my light, flipped it on, and there was nothing in my room. I figured I must have imagined it. I walk over to my phone to shut it off, and as I look down at my phone, there are 2 strands of dark hair intertwined in my fingers. I'm blonde. I've never been so fucking scared in my life. I still don't know who or what was 2 inches from my face that night.
This reminds me of something that happened to me 2 years ago. Hang out with friends, have known each other for years. One of them brought Jay along. Wasn't really part of our group, but we still knew each other for years. Supposedly Jay wasn't doing too well. My friend thought we should hang out with him. Things are going well. Some drinking, some joking, wandering around aimlessly. B is with us. Pretty much look up to this guy. Incredible funny, witty as fuck. Can talk himself out of any situation. Not a Chad, but still excels in any social situation. Except for Jay, everyone is have a good time. Crossing a highway bridge, suddenly Jay jumps off the bridge without any warning. Hear car horns, everyone is shocked/screaming. B, in the back, whispers to himself he didn't fly so good. Turn around in disbelief. Can clearly tell he tries to suppress his smile. Realization hits. Remember all the times he'd talk people into helping him. All the times he'd get people to do exactly what he wants. He was always manipulating people. Remember him once saying to me, "You just gotta tell people what they want to hear." His eyes literally scream, "I'll have been caught." He is a psychopath. Feeling of pure dread. Snap out of it, and due to the ensuing chaos forget about it for the rest of the day. Imagine talking to a friend and then realizing that it's a stranger just pretending to be him. Imagine that stranger looking at you like he knows you realized his secret. That's how those few seconds felt like. Was like 8 or 7, running a really bad fever. Parents don't know what to do. Call 999. They say put him in the bathtub full of cold water, so they do. Remember just being super cold, and then all of a sudden like I was burning hot, instantly go unconscious. Therese, this pops somewhere in the middle of my brain. I open my eyes, am floating about 2 feet above my body looking up at the ceiling. Not a ceiling anymore, hard to describe. Am looking at some kind of desert, looks almost like pictures of Mars, really bleak, seems to go on forever. Then Therese, a click, and an explosion a little ways away. Watch the smoke and fire for what feels like hours. Then I feel another pop and am back in my body. Parents rush me to OND. End up having a super bad case of the flu. Years later, in Afghanistan, we're out in the middle of nowhere. Humvee is keeping to a pre-designated path to try and avoid IEDs. We're just in a random spot in the desert, and all of a sudden I get this terrible feeling. Tell driver to stop. He does. Asks what's wrong. I tell him there's a bomb up ahead. They check it out. Sure enough, there's fucking signs of a fresh dig. It's enough that it would have fucking vaporized us. Remember the night in the bathtub. Have absolutely no explanation for it.
Fin fact here. I have lived my whole life in the forests. I was about half a year old when my mom and dad took me innawoods for the first time. It was in the middle of winter too. I was born in previous July. They told me that they just bundled me up warmly and pulled me in a sled as they trekked into our innawoods cabin. When I was still like 4 years old, we kids, me and my sisters, spend our warm summers running around forest completely naked. Not even shoes. When my mom saw that we were naked, she called us to her, and she fastened knives hanging on our waists with a rubber band. One of those "it's dangerous to go alone, take this" moments. And off to the forest we went again, naked except for knives. Because you gotta have a knife in the forest. These days that kind of childcare would warrant a visit from social workers. What I try to say is that I am not afraid of forests. We have always lived near bears and lynxes and the like, and we are not afraid of them either. They know not to mess with humans because we are crazy and have guns and shit, but when I was a kid, I was afraid of the dark. Backwater Finland's dark autumn forest can be a scary place for a kid. I was all creepypasta as hell when I thought of all those monstrosities that might lurk in the darkness. One dark autumn night my dad, old Lurk Man, told me to come with him. He told me there was something he would like to show me in the forest. I was like, I don't wanna. It's dark and scary. But this time Dad was adamant. Not buts of ifs, this time we go no matter how scared was. He took one flashlight with him and into the forest we went. It wasn't even very far, but far enough for a 4 to 5-year-old kid. Kind of, "Are you sure we can find our way back, Dad?" Far away. It was far enough. Then he stopped and turned off the flashlight.
I was freaking out. But Dad just calmly stood there and refused to turn the flashlight back on. He wouldn't let me have it, either. He just stood there in the dark. He stood there a long time. At first I was near tears out of fear. But then his calmness started to calm me too. Obviously we were not in immediate danger, since he just chilled there. So slowly I too started to calm down. Then, when I had settled down a bit, Dad leaned to me and told me slowly and clearly there is nothing more dangerous in this forest than you and Elle. And he explained how we humans are even more scary to animals than they are for us. That even if I meet something scary in the forest, be it animal or something I don't even recognize, I could be certain that it would be just as afraid of me as I would be afraid of it. Chances are, it would be even more afraid of me than I would be of it. Sure, it might try to hunt and kill me if it was really hungry, but it would still be scared stiff about going near humans. For creatures of forest, humans are crazy and scary fuckers. We could use that fear against them. There is nothing more dangerous in the forest than humans. For animals, we are the hunters that prowl in the night that they wouldn't want to run into, and then we slowly walked back to the cabin. In darkness. He didn't turn on the light. He didn't let me grab his hand. I had to walk on my own after him. And as we walked, he told me how to move silently in forest night. He told me what shapes to look for and how to make sense of what my eyes saw in the dark. How to identify different trees and plants. How to use my ears and make sense of what I hear. How to identify bird calls and what they mean. What different kind of forest smells mean. He told me how to read the forest night. Later on, he told me how to track and hunt in the forest. I haven't been afraid of the dark ever since. Because in the night there is nothing more scary than me. A bit of a twist in there. True story, by the way. Dad totally did that to me. And it worked. Probably would have been called child abuse these days. So yeah. I enjoy these creepypastas. Those nice creepy feelings in the comfort of my home, that's what they are, entertainment. The reality of wild encounter in the woods is a lot worse than creepypastas. In the worst case, you might run into a human.
This happened a while ago. Be doing a K challenge. Missed out on summer, so had to do it in the middle of winter. Flow ride a winter, so it doesn't really count. Set up camp. Bring only a 50 lb recurve bow and double bubble toil and treble barrel shotgun with me. It's in the middle of an old clearing. Usually it would be occupied with tents, but the harsh winter warded everyone off that year. Airy buddy, cept me. Get a good fire going, pull out pamphlet on the area I'm camping at. The pamphlet literally says that the Native American translation for the place was, silent, noiseless, quiet, sneaking, hills. nervouslaughter.jpg. It's nighttime, decide to turn in. Sleep with shoddy by my side. Uneventful night, insanely quiet, which sort of helped me fall asleep. Wake up, warm sunlight dances on the ground. Everything seems to be right cobber. Then, I notice the clearing is a perfect circle. This is strange, because I could have sworn it was more of a pear shape when I set up camp. I turned to the right, to walk further in a woods when I noticed something off-white dangling from a branch. It's a skull. A little bit weirded out, but not scared. Coyotes are pretty common here. Turn to the right again, another skull. Repeat this, frigging coyote skulls everywhere. Retreat to the center of the camp. Coyote skulls are clearly visible everywhere. How did I miss this? Clutch shoddy a little tighter, return to tent. Guzzle down some homemade tea. I used some safe to eat leaves that I found around the campsite. Calm my nerves a little. Feeling a little braver, walk back out to look around some more. Enter detective mode, look at the skulls again. Notice by the wear on their teeth, or lack of it, that they were all around 8 to 14 months old. Decide to take them all down. Having their hollow eye socket stare at me like that is way too spooky. By the time I'm finished screwing around, it's dinner time. Go out, and hunt a squirrel, make rotisserie.
I used some spices I found in the woods to give it flavor. I knew they weren't toxic. However, I forgot they were also used as laxatives, but since this is a creepy thread and not an MRE thread, I won't go into detail. Clean myself up and return to my tent to sleep. I wake up a little while later at midnight exactly. Loud yaps and rustling coming from everywhere. I grab my bow and shoddy and carefully peek out through tent opening. Damn. I was pushed onto my back. White snapping jaws were inches from my face. I use a broadhead to stab whatever's on me. It goes down like a ton of bricks. Pull out my cell phone to use it as a flashlight. It's a frigging coyote. The broadhead went right through its throat, out through the top of its head. The yaps and barks are getting louder and closer. In an adrenaline high, I blast randomly through my tent opening. I'm not sure if I hit anything, Too occupied with reloading. More of the sons of bitches are pouring in. Shoot, reload. Shoot, reload. Shoot, reload. I do this until I'm out of buckshot, say a quick prayer, grab my bow. As I reach over for it, a sharp pain strikes my wrist. Triple time Zev Fua. SHI damn, I'm too wide-eyed to do anything. The coyote I literally stabbed with a frigging broadhead is biting my right hand. He leaps on top of me. Luckily for me, the arrow stuck in his head keeps him from coming close to my face. I'm hysterical by this point, screaming, help. Damn. Die. Just then, I remember I brought along a double XL balisong for gits and shiggles. Use it to chop the bastard's head off. Run out of the tent. I accidentally grabbed my shotgun instead of my bow. I'm spinning around trying to find a way of escape. Suddenly, all the yapping stops. The coyotes are backing up to a campfire. It wasn't my campfire. Above the blaze floated a coyote skull with feathers strewn about it. Notice it's not actually floating, but instead, is being worn as a mask by a naked man with pitch black skin.
I scream, infuriated at him. I think I was trying to curse at him. I jerk the trigger on my shotgun, and to my surprise, it goes off. His shoulder flinches back, and he grabs his stomach. This part I can't Greentext. It's just too hard to describe. He pulled open his stomach, and this gut-wrenching feeling of anxiety poured over. Something akin to the sound of a cannon or lightning started going off, but it was way too prolonged to be a rifle or something like that. I think of it today more like a scream. I woke up later, in a ranger's station. They said they received a call in the middle of the night. Someone kept on screaming coward. And damned be. Into the phone. They patrolled all around, until they found me at the campsite. I was covered in bites, not from coyotes, save the one on my wrist, but rather something more like a human. The wounds were too marred to judge accurately. They were really mad at me. They thought I went coyote hunting while high or something. The second campfire at the site was stacked to the height of a man with coyote bones. I'm not allowed to go there anymore, but I don't think I would even if I could. By the way, the guy looked like pic-relateds.
I'd like to start off by saying that I don't have a fucking clue why I'm posting this on X, or, really, at all. Maybe I'm afraid of dying, or something. The events described in this story happened a month and a half ago, in Shenandoah, West Virginia, although I typed this up about 2 weeks ago. I just haven't really had the guts to post this until what happened yesterday. The story starts in late September, when my family went to go visit our relatives, who invited us up to celebrate one of them, Desiree, getting like $2,000 in some scratch-off lottery thing. They live in this really fucking shitty part of Shenandoah that people from Charlestown, Shepherdstown and Ranson, basically the least rednecky parts of WV, like to call Squalor Holler. It's way up on the mountain, and exactly like how everyone pictures it when they hear about it. Nothing but ramshackle shacks, rusty-ass rebuilt trailers, everything fucking covered in decades-old Christmas decorations because they're all too busy being smelly rednecks to ever clean up. Real deliverance shit, just no rivers or canoes. The relatives we were visiting are absolutely confirmed inbreeders, all cousins fucking each other. We don't refer to them as aunt, uncle, whatever, just relatives. Not terrible people or anything, just absolutely cartoonish, depressing hillbilly. So anyway, we're up here in this godforsaken trailer. It sucks. There's like 8 of them, plus me, my dad, my mom, and my sister. About 2 hours in, my mom takes my cell phone so that I can focus on the family time together, which is bullshit. All we did the whole time was eat TV dinners and be forced to watch NASCAR and shit. After like 6 hours of this shit, about 10 minutes before we're supposed to leave, it starts raining. We know how treacherous the roads can get up on the mountain, so we decide to wait for the rain to die down. Flash forward 2 hours later. It's fucking dark as hell, 10 o'clock, and there's a flood warning for the area. I have my phone back by this time, no reception, though, of course. I'm playing Tetris and Texas Hold'em and stuff, when suddenly I hear my dad start losing his shit in the next room. I walk over, and it turns out that they let slip that they'd buried their kid. Thomas, outside, and apparently were afraid the rain would wash up his body or some other horseshit. The kid was like 6, he was attacked by a dog, and they never told the cops. Just fucking buried him like he was a family pet. My dad's flipping his shit, and rightfully so, because you know, we live in the 21st century and all. So our relatives all say they'll sort it all out in the morning. My parents tell me and my sister to stay in the same room as them during the night, and we do. None of us really suspected that they'd killed Thomas or anything, since they're really peaceful. They didn't even own any guns aside from this one old-timey double-barrel shotgun they had on a mantle. Nevertheless, we were creeped the fuck out, and intended to tell the cops in the morning once we got to town. So, it was like 3 in the morning, I couldn't sleep. Power had gone out for the 5th time or so, and I'm not able to charge my dead phone. Worst part is, I could see Thomas's little grave right outside the window. Little cross on it and everything, and I assumed the kid couldn't have been buried deep at all since they were so worried about him just washing up out of the grave. So I was just fixated on it. Kept being drawn to looking out the window. And then I saw the fucking worst thing in my life. Something was creeping through the trees toward the house. I stared at it for a while, but couldn't get a good look at it since it was raining and the brush was so thick.
For a few minutes I assumed it was 2 really pale horses, kind of ambling through the woods side by side. But then it walked into the moonlight, and I saw that it was all one thing, like a kind of human torso, but wider. It finally stepped into full view, and I saw it had something like 6 legs, kind of somewhere between a beetle's legs and a horse's legs. 2 arms, right where someone would normally have them, but they were about a half a foot longer than any normal man's arms. It had a bald head, but the face looked like some sort of fucking bizarre masquerade ball kind of mask. This fucking clenched up, furrowed forehead, and a nose that looked sort of like a crow's or a raven's beak. It didn't have eyes, either, just like the depressions where Eve's would do. It looked like it had a human mouth, underneath its proboscis. What still strikes me to this day is that it seemed to have a penis, too, like right on the abdomen where a normal person's dick would be. The thing moved sort of gracefully, and made these soft thumping noises when it moved. It must have been like 7, 8 feet tall, but sounded like it weighed maybe only 150 pounds at most. It starts walking towards Thomas's grave, and then I finally snap out of whatever trance I was in, and just scream. My mom is the first to wake up, and I tell her to look out the window. She rushes over and doesn't really seem to understand what she's looking at. After a minute, though, the thing bends down and starts pawing at the grave with its hands. My dad and Jasper rush in, and Jasper just fucking loses his shit. Screams like a little girl, runs back out of the room, yelling for his father, yelling it's outside, it came and it's outside. I look back and see the thing is digging furiously at the ground, kicking up huge mounds of dirt. I hear these sounds of feet running around the house. I think they were looking for the shotgun. The thing reaches into the hole and grabs up what I assume was Thomas's body by the leg in one hand. The thing kind of gallops back into the woods, snapping all these branches and shit, and then that's when we all hear it, a kid crying. The sound of a child sobbing and crying, from the direction that the thing took off, and we left as soon as the rain let up, at like 5 a.m. I don't even think we told anyone at the house. Drove straight back to Ranson, only stopping for gas. No one said a word to each other. My family refuses to speak about what happened. I tried to bring it up once, just to make sure it was real. My dad told me to shut the fuck up, so I did. I typed this up about 3 weeks after it happened, but just saved it to a notepad file and left it alone. Never mentioned it to any of my friends or anything, just tried to erase it from my mind by getting absolutely fucked up drunk whenever my thoughts lingered on it. It mostly worked, up until yesterday. See, I work at this gas station in Ranson, from 8 p.m. to 3 a.m. I work the register, keep the place clean, and take out the trash. Yesterday, when I was bringing the trash bags over to the back of the building for the dude in the morning to take care of, I heard what I had assumed to be some junkie fucking around in the dumpster. I yelled at whoever it was a couple of times to get the hell out before I called the cops. But as I walked towards the source of the noise, I suddenly heard those same footsteps. That soft thump. Hooves or feet, or whatever the hell they were. I turned right around and went back into the store and hid behind the counter. I look over at the outside security monitor and see some kind of movement from just off-screen, something huge casting a shadow and moving, catch a glimpse of, I don't know, an elbow or something. A pale limb, darting in and out of view. It had to have been the same thing. I waited for it to leave, and after a while, it did. I woke up behind the counter at 6 a.m. this morning to my manager giving me this fucking look like I'm a drug addict or something. Went home, typed the rest of this up, and that's about it.
A case that chilled a psychiatrist to the bone. I am a psychiatrist, and the other day I encountered a case which sent a chill down my spine. Some time ago a new family moved in my neighborhood, a couple in their 60s and their son, who was about 30 years old. The son was a so-called hikikomori and was seldom seen outside his home. Naturally, I couldn't ask the family directly, but it was obvious that they had moved to the new place to escape from the social stigma. Days had passed and the sun went out less and less until he would not leave the house at all. He was now a complete hikikomori. Every night the mother was heard screaming at him in his bedroom. When I sometimes chanced to meet the mother, she greeted me with a smile, but she always looked pale and haggard.
A half-year had passed since I last caught a glimpse of the son when his father came to me and said, "Could ask you to visit us tomorrow?" I had never been involved with them personally or as a doctor, but since we were neighbors and neighbors were supposed to help each other, I agreed to come. The next day when I visited them, both father and mother welcomed me at the door. "Please, come this way," the mother said as she led the way to her son's room. When we came to the front of the room, the mother suddenly shouted, "I'm going to open the door." As soon as she burst in, she shrieked, "Why are you still sleeping? Get up!" She tore the duvet off the bed. I saw what was lying there and was struck dumb with disbelief. There was only one faceless, unclothed mannequin lying on the bed. Then the father told me, "The person I want you to see is my wife, who cannot bear to accept the reality.